By the early 1990s, Capcom was on top of the world. Street Fighter had redefined arcades. Final Fight was still making the rounds on home consoles, and the original Mega Man series had cemented the company as one of the gaming's most trusted games. But after 6 Mega Man games on the NES, the formula was starting to feel a little too familiar, I assume. I never played these. But then came Mega Man X. It was faster, sharper, and more mature, an evolution of the classic series that felt like Capcom was passing the torch to a new generation. When X released on the Super Nintendo, it didn't just keep Mega Man relevant, it was one of the best games on the system. But with that success came a new kind of pressure. Capcom didn't want to waste momentum, and to my surprise, Mega Man X2 was out. It used the same engine, the same style, and even some of the same assets. But under the hood, it was pushing the Super Nintendo a little harder. The development team implemented a C4 enhancement chip to improve sprite scaling and effects, hoping to deliver something that felt like a real follow-up, not just a quick sequel. And I say to my surprise because the first time hearing about Mega Man X2 wasn't actually hearing about it at all. It was seeing a commercial for Mega Man X4, and I remember thinking, X4? What happened to X2 and X3? It was more of me using common sense than anything else. I figured there had to have been an X2 and X3 if they had a Mega Man X4 that was coming out. This was the time that PlayStation was already out. Later on in high school, I talked to someone who mentioned he actually owned X2 and X3. And after talking to him about it for a little bit, I asked if I could borrow it. And he said, yeah, but he ended up never bringing it to school. And he always gave me, yo, I forgot, or I'll bring it next time. And then it's like, yo, you could have just said no. At any rate, it wasn't until later I actually played it as an adult. And I was excited when I got my hands on it because I love Mega Man X1 and X4, and I thought 2 would be just as good. So let's take a look at Mega Man X2, how it builds on what came before, where it stumbles, and whether it truly deserves to stand alongside its legendary predecessor. With that being said, I'll be doing a lot of comparisons to X1, so don't be surprised about that. The story of Mega Man X2 is 6 months later, after Sigma's defeat, the Maverick hunters are reduced to just a fraction of their original force. While Maverick activity had temporarily slowed, it's now on the rise again. Investigations of captured Mavericks reveal specialized microchips, each marked with Sigma's insignia. Tracing their origin, Dr. Kane discovers an underground factory in the desert. Remnants of Sigma's forces appear to be planning a comeback. X and the Maverick hunters are dispatched to shut it down. Amid this turmoil, X faces the leaders of the rebellion, the X-Hunters, Surges, Agile, and Violent. They reveal that they have reconstructed Zero's body in 3 separate parts, but to activate him, they need his control chip, which is still with Dr. Kane. The X-Hunters challenge X to a series of duels for a piece of Zero to decide who will ultimately resurrect him. They're trying to buy time. I think it was to resurrect Sigma, but they never actually say why, or if they did, I must have missed it. But anyway, they want to slow X down and make it harder for him to stop the remaining Mavericks. Throughout the game, Sigma is hinted at as the lingering threat, but he doesn't actually appear until later in the game. The X-Hunters are the most immediate threat to X as they challenge him to a duel. You will want to get Zero's parts back, so you are constantly on the lookout for them. Recovering all of Zero's parts leads to his revival before the final confrontation, giving the ending a sense of completion, but not really because, the ending is kind of the same regardless. Depending on your skill, you may want to fight Zero instead. Mega Man X2 tells the story in more cutscenes than X1. It's a fair amount, but not too much for this type of game. By putting the X-Hunters front and center, X2 shifts the series to focus from a single looming villain to a series of adversaries who interference drives the pace of the game. It may seem like a bait and switch if you weren't paying attention to the beginning. Either way, a subtle but effective evolution of storytelling in the Mega Man franchise. Too bad they decided to reuse this for a bunch of other Mega Man X games as well. The gameplay is the same as X1. X loses all of his upgrades in X2 except for the dash, which seems to make sense for them to keep that. What I can only assume is that the other upgrades aren't canon. X can get everything he lost from X1 except the Hadouken. There's the same amount of upgrades here, more evenly spaced out too. On top of that, there are some hidden rooms where you can collect extra energy in a few stages. I learned that recently. The X-Hunter system is clever but flawed. You can see where they are on the map once you beat into Mavericks, but if you complete a stage where they're hiding without confronting them, they'll disappear. Miss your chance and that part of Zero is gone forever. This is something that could have been explained, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
The Mavericks in X2 could feel a little more distinct than in the first game, mainly because some were actually made by Sigma's forces this time. They all just aren't former Maverick hunters. I'm going to talk about each stage in the most optimal order. So, starting with Wire Sponge, he is one of Sigma's more unusual creations. An incident during his development gave him a childlike, unstable personality. So now he laughs, dances, and toys with the environment for fun. Sigma placed him in control of a weather station, and his stage reflects that chaotic energy. You can switch between rain, lightning, and sunshine, which may affect the difficulty of the stage. I'm not 100% sure about that because, in all honesty, I get through it all the same. The fight with Wire Sponge is deceptively simple until he gets mad. Once his health drops down to half, he charges himself with electricity, extending his range, and he can deal heavy damage with the lightning. Will Gator was once an officer of the Mavericks' 6th Naval Unit alongside Bubble Crab, but his violent temper led him down the wrong path. After attacking a fellow hunter on a mission, he was branded a criminal and went rogue. Sigma gave him control of a massive dinosaur-shaped tank meant to destroy the entire city, and it fits his chaotic nature. The stage is a standout, tight corridors, conveyor belts, and spikes that test your movement. Will Gator's boss fight takes place in an oil-filled arena where he dives in and pops out with little warning. He'll try to grab you and chomp on you when he pops up. However, you can wall jump high enough that he can't grab you. Other than him coming in and out, trying to grab you, he is relatively simple, probably one of the more simple Mavericks to beat in this game. Bubble Crab is Gator's old rival. He's driven by greed instead of rage. He joins Sigma's rebellion simply for the promise of wealth and now guards a deep sea base used for Maverick transport. Why do Reploids need money? His stage feels slower paced, built around underwater physics, and a fish-shaped sub that will take several hits to defeat. It's a visual standout though. The lighting and reflections give it a unique atmosphere. The fight against Bubble Crab himself is pretty straightforward, but the challenge comes from managing your position in the water and avoiding his charging. Flame Stag used to be a part of the Maverick Hunter's 17th elite unit with Boomerang, but he deflected during Sigma's first uprising. Now he hides out in an active volcano trying to trigger an eruption that could block out the sun and freeze the planet. Excuse me, would you like to elaborate on that plan? Because right now, that makes no sense.
Shut up, you! Take one last look at the sun, Springfield.
His stage is one of the most fast-paced in the game, filled with lava chases and wall jumping sections that you can't really hesitate at, otherwise you'll take damage. Thankfully, the lava isn't a insta-kill. His boss fight is pretty aggressive as well. He's fast, and his pattern rewards players who stay calm under pressure. Morph Moth is one of the most bizarre Maverick. Officially, there's no record of him in any database. He seems to be some sort of prototype Reploid designed to absorb scrap metal and repurpose it as energy. Under Sigma's command, he takes over a junkyard and uses it to rebuild destroyed Mavericks. The stage recaptures that feeling perfectly. It's grimy, cluttered, and crawling with small enemies that drop debris. Halfway through, you fight a mid-boss that literally reconstructs itself out of junk. The Morph Moth battle is one of the more creative ones in the game. He starts off in a cocoon form, spinning trash everywhere, and then transforms mid-fight into a full moth, floating around and showering the room with lasers and something else. Fairy dust, maybe.
Just a little bit of pixie dust.
But another thing about this is if you leave him alone, he'll start to get bigger, and after a while, he'll just transform on his own. When I say leave him alone, if you don't damage him enough before he gets to his next pattern, then he'll go ahead and transform. Magna Centipede has one of the darker backstories. He was a former member of the Elite Special Unit who was captured and brainwashed by Sigma's forces during the first rebellion. Now he runs a high-tech computer center that's spreading Maverick virus across the globe. Okay, by the way, there's a Maverick virus that they just now want to implement out. I guess they're retconning this right now. His stage is memorable for its stealth mechanic. Security robots and scanners detect X, and they'll increase the stage difficulty by activating. They are inactive at first, and then if you get spotted, they'll start to activate and they'll shoot lasers at X. So yeah, It's a cool concept for the Super Nintendo era. The fight with Centipede himself plays out like a mind game. He'll teleport and then he'll grab you with his tail and start to literally drain your health, slowing down your movements. Crystal Snail remains mysterious, but his SA class status means he was already considered a dangerous criminal before joining the X-Hunters. He's stationed in a mine, one of the most visually striking levels in X2. The Maverick himself has good defense, because when he's in his shell, he can deflect attacks. And then when he retracts into it, he becomes completely invulnerable. His weakness will make him come out of the shell and separate, and then he'll immediately try to get back in the shell, which gives you more time to damage him. Honestly, another easy boss, especially when you have his weakness. Overdrive Ostrich was once a part of the Maverick's Hunter's 7th Airborne Unit, but lost his ability to fly in an incident. Sigma saw potential in his speed and recruited him to the cause. His Desert Highway stage is one of the more fun stages to play, fast-paced bite segments and long stretches that encourage mobility. His fights take place on a wide open field, the first in Mega Man X games, and his stages also has hills and valleys. So that is also a good difference from other Mega Man X games who, for the most part, all of them have a flat surface. He charges at you, he'll leap at you across the arena and constantly keep you moving around. If he's off the screen, he'll go into the background and then jump up into the air and then come down. So dude got incredible hops, first off, foremost, because that dude had to have jumped like at least half a mile. But either way, pretty good fight. One of the more entertaining fights in this game to me. After defeating all of the 8 Mavericks, X locates the X-Hunters' hidden base beneath the frozen wastelands of the North Pole. This marks the final stretch of the game, a multi-stage fortress filled with some of the toughest platforming traps and boss battles in Mega Man X2. If I could say one thing about all 3 of the stages that they're in, Neo-Violins, Surges, and Agiles, is that they all love spikes. That is the main thing to get out of every single one of these stages here. Neo-Violins is more of a vertical stage than horizontal. And I would say that it probably gets a little more horizontal as stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 goes. But one thing, spike floors, spike walls, you'll be doing a bunch of air dashing. And that makes the game way more difficult. If you decide to not get the air dash, the leg upgrade, you will have to have Crystal Snail's weapon here. And that's going to be absolutely necessary in order to get past some of these parts as well. I can definitely say it did a good job with making you use your sub weapons. As far as Neo-Violin, let's go ahead and go from the stages to the bosses. So Neo-Violin, to start off, he's the part of stage 1. He's basically the exact same. The only difference is that there's 3 blocks that appear and disappear. And when they reappear again, they'll be in different areas. It's very random. So sometimes this will be in your favor because I don't even know what it's called, that spike ball on top of his head. When he uses that, when he starts throwing that around, it doesn't go through the blocks. So you can use that to be as like a barrier between the blocks. So sometimes that helps. And then other times you kind of get closed in with that. So you ain't really got much of a chance to escape from it. The other 2, like Surges, he goes from being on that little platform, he goes from that to a freaking tank or whatever you want to call that thing. But it's a major upgrade no matter how you look at it, because now it got turrets on it. You can't even hit them until you get rid of the turrets in the front at first. Spikes on the ground now. So now you got to go between moving platforms that go up and down. Definitely a lot harder. If you have the chest upgrade and you got the Giga Blast filled up, you can use that to get rid of all of the turrets all at once and just have them exposed to being hit. But even still, that's still a pretty difficult battle. Or you can use Ostrich weapon to get rid of them a little bit easier. As far as Agiles, in all honesty, I don't even remember how this dude's stage goes, because I always have the Shoryuken at this point, and I just take him out before he can do anything. I really should have done this stage at least one time the regular way so I could talk about it. But as of right now, I can't talk about it. He's the easiest boss to do. X-Hunter stage 3 is when you get the Shoryuken. So I'll start to immediately use it. And this dude, it is what it is, man. So first off, when you get to stage 4, I wanted to say that it looks exactly like Magnus Centipede stage. The primary focus here is the boss refights. By now, every Maverick can be defeated efficiently with their proper weakness, but the challenge lies in stamina, managing your health, sub-tanks, and weapon energy through the marathon of rematches. I would like to also say that this stage, the beginning of it, is the exact same as Magnus Centipedes. It gives off a cookie cutter type of situation. Like, you ever been to a neighborhood who all of them have the exact same floor plan? That's what this is giving off. So after beating all the Mavericks again, you'll go down, and this is where you'll find Zero, whether it be the real Zero or a clone. And this is where you will either fight the real Zero or you'll see the clone get defeated by the real Zero as he comes in. Either way, once that is done, Zero will open up a path for you to go down and fight Sigma. Sigma ties everything together. The first phase recalls some of his old patterns, but adds some projectile timing, while his virus form changes the rhythm entirely. There's no health bar. He summons small machines in the fight and will try to enclose you in his head, almost like he's trying to take over X. He'll change color to show that you are damaging him until he's defeated. There'll be a small cutscene of Sigma complaining about getting beat by X again, and X and Zero will end up being on the cliff watching Sigma's forces get destroyed, just like the first game. Feel like they could have did something different than that, but whatever. One of the most satisfying parts of the Mega Man X game is testing out the weapons that you earn from each Maverick. X2 doesn't disappoint in giving you new tools to experiment with. They are a little disappointing though. Power-wise, the weapon balance in X2 is uneven, but there's still enough creativity here to make testing them part of the fun. The big difference from X1 is how situational some of X2's weapons feel. While X1's arsenal lean into power, tools like the Hornet Torpedo or Storm Tornado could handle almost any situation, X2's set asks you to think more tactically. There's a mix of standouts, gimmicks, and one-time uses. Let's go through all of them. The spin wheel fires a rotating blade that crawls along the ground, dealing damage to anything it touches. It's one of the few weapons that can also break certain walls, making it useful for exploration. When charged, the spin wheel is released, which on contact, it turns into 8 energy bolts, which fire in all directions. This seems like it would be a lot more powerful than it actually is. It is surprisingly weak and does not do damage that fast. It takes almost like a full second or half a second after another hit is actually calculated, I guess you could say, in the game. Like the fire wheel is in X1, I kind of thought that this would have the same effect. The Bubble Splash. This creates a continuous stream of bubbles that expand outward, but the range is limited. A charge shot surrounds X with a protective ring of energy bubbles that can damage enemies at close range. It's more defensive than offensive, especially since you can't shoot while it's active. It constantly drains your energy too, and you can still get hit. It also lets you jump higher in water, which is useful to get this E-Tank in Bubble Crab stage, but you can also get this on this ledge here that makes you jump higher than normal for some reason, so you really don't need it at all. The Speed Burner is a fiery burst that shoots across the screen at high speed. It's fast, but not necessarily powerful. When charged, it turns into a rocket dash, propelling X forward in a burst of flame. That's one of the most useful things to use in the game, and it's fun to use as well. You'll see speedrunners use it all the time. The Silk Shot is one of the more interesting weapons in the game because it behaves differently depending on the stage that you're in. There are 4 variations of the Silk Shot: scrap metal, rocks, leaves, and crystals. Scrap metal is the most common one. It fires a chunk of debris that explodes on impact, whether that's the floor, the wall, or an enemy. You'll see this version the most. It'll be in stages like Morph Moth, Magma Centipede, Will Gator, along with the indoor section of Overdrive Ostrich stage, and even in X-Hunter levels. The rocks are found in Bubble Crab and Flame Stag stages, as well as the outdoor section of Overdrive Ostrich level. These projectiles bounce a few times before exploding, and interestingly, Agile takes extra damage from this version when you fight him in either of those stages. Leaves show up exclusively in Wire Spun stage, They arc upward and they leave a small trail behind them before disappearing. It's the weakest version of Silk Shot. Violin actually takes significant damage from this form when you fight him here. It's kind of ironic because the one that's physically the strongest is taken out by the weakest version of the Silk Shot. And finally, you have the crystallized version. It's a shard that skims across the floor, bouncing off surfaces before shattering into smaller pieces. You'll only find this one in Crystal Snail stage, and it happens to be highly effective against surges when fought in that environment. It's a small detail, but it highlights how Mega Man X2 rewards players who experiment. Even something as simple as the sub-weapon changes based on where you use it, giving the game a sense of adaptability that most players will probably never even notice, because I definitely didn't know about this before. The Silk Shot has another use as well. There are 3 stages that have hidden rooms. They are completely empty, but if you use the Silk Shot there, you'll be able to pull in ammo or extra lives. So it's pretty nice. You have to have the Buster upgrade in order to be able to use this though. Magnet Mine, a slow-moving projectile that sticks to walls or enemies before exploding. When fully charged, this weapon fires a small, slow-moving black hole that will damage enemies in its path and draw enemies' shots. When enough shots are drawn in, the charged mine will grow in size up to 2 stages. This shot can also be aimed up or down and multiple times until it leaves the screen, although it becomes more difficult to control after changing direction. The Crystal Hunter fires a shot that freezes enemies in crystal blocks and can be used as stepping stones. It's useful for platforming and a few puzzle-like moments, but against larger enemies and bosses, it bounces right off them. The charged version slows down enemies on the screen. Sonic Slicer sends 2 sharp blades that bounce off surfaces and can hit multiple enemies. It's not bad, but it takes precision to use effectively. The charged version rains down a fury of energy blades from above. Visually impressive, somewhat difficult to aim. It's strong when it hits though, making it a solid choice for clearing large enemies. The Chain Strike. It functions like a short-range grappling hook. It can damage enemies, grab items, and pull X toward walls or platforms. It becomes surprisingly useful for mobility in certain levels. The charged version fires a large energy chain that extends further and deals heavier damage, but it's still situational. The attacks in X2 are a bit of a mixed bag, as I said before. Some are creative, like Speed Burner's Rocket Dash or Silk Shot Item Pool, while others feel like a larger version of their regular shots. Compared to X1, the weapons are nowhere near as powerful. They don't feel good defensively either. You have a Storm Tornado and Heat Wave as powerhouses in X1, and Chameleon Sting's charged shot gives temporary invincibility. X2 weapons in general have better variety because they add more movement along with offensive and that one defensive. In X2, the Charge Burner gives you the extra dash. Strike Chain can help you get across gaps. Crystal Hunter gives you a way to make extra platforms to get to higher spaces or get through longer gaps. And you can slow everything down with the magnet as well. In X2 overall, they got more creative with the weapons, but I'd rather have better offense and defense than variety, especially when it comes to some of these because they feel like a one-time use or they just plain feel useless. I can say the same thing about some of X1's weapons like Electric Spark, but when you have Storm Tornado or Heat Wave, I mean, you really don't need anything else. Like the first game, Mega Man X2 continues the tradition of rewarding exploration with hidden armor capsules, upgrades that enhance X's combat abilities and mobility. They're still presented as gifts from Dr. Light, carrying a nostalgic weight every time you uncover one. The leg upgrade is the most straightforward. Since you already have the dash, it adds something new, the air dash. It's a small but meaningful improvement that can change the game's movement. The air dash lets you extend jumps, recover from mistakes, and pull off advanced maneuvers during boss fights. It's a natural evolution of X's mobility, and once you get used to it, it's hard to imagine going back. It's actually something that you have to find this time. It's in Overdrive Ostrich stage. The arm upgrade is found in Will Gator stage, and it gives X the ability to store 2 fully charged shots at once. It's a great improvement. Its value comes from how you can chain 2 shots back to back, keeping up the damage output without having to wait for another charge. The arm capsule also grants you access to charged versions of the special weapons, which, as mentioned earlier, are hit and miss in usefulness. It's not a revolutionary upgrade, but it's a good evolution to what was already there. The body upgrade reduces incoming damage by 50%, just like X1. Functionality, it's almost identical and one of the most valuable upgrades in the game. X also gains the Giga Crush attack. Its weapon energy gauge only fills when X is hit by enemy projectiles. It's only usable with a full gauge. It deals a considerable amount of damage to all enemies on the screen. Unlike X's other special weapons, it doesn't refill after completing a stage. It's a simple, consistent improvement that serves its purpose, and it's also in Morph Moth stage. The helmet upgrade was the least impactful in X1, and that's still the same here. X1, it lets you break certain blocks with your head, which was only useful in like 1 or 2 spots. In X2, it's replaced by a scanner system that marks hidden items in your stage select map. It's convenient, but it doesn't affect gameplay once you already found everything. It's a step up from X1's headbutt function, but not by much. Both helmet upgrades fall into the same category. Nice to have, but not something you ever rely on. And one downside to X2 version is that while you're using the scanning system, X can't shoot. A small but annoying limitation that makes it feel less useful during gameplay. There's also another button you can use for this. So why don't they use that button for this? It's in Crystal Snail stage. If you compare these two side by side, X2 armor is better in every way, including the way it looks. One of the things that stood out in the original Mega Man X was the soundtrack. Almost every stage had a memorable theme that matched its design. Storm Eagle and Spark Mandrill, I don't really need to say more. By contrast, X2 music doesn't reach the same heights, but it's still competent and it serves the game. I'll be honest, I never remembered anybody's stage theme. They're all just so whatever. There's a notable difference in energy. Some of the tracks are slightly repetitive, and a few lean on generic electronic motifs. But tracks like Wheel Gator Stage and Overdrive Ostrich Stage carry the intensity needed for the moment, and the Fortress themes do a solid job of ramping up the tension without overwhelming the player. Sound effects, as usual, are crisp and informative. Jumping, dashing, weapon charges, enemy hits all give instant feedback, reinforcing the game's tight controls. Even if the music isn't as iconic, overall audio design ensures every action feels responsive, which is just as important as the player's experience. I say that, but at the same time, I also want to just mention that X2 sounds are the exact same as X1's, and I guess I'll leave that there. When X2 was released in 1994, it received largely positive reviews from both critics and fans, though it didn't quite reach the near universal acclaim of the original X. Critics praised the game for expanding on the formula with X1 with tighter controls, more complex stage design, and the addition of the X Hunters adding a new layer of strategy and tension. The movement upgrades and subtle story developments were highlighted as improvements that gave the series more depth. On the other hand, some reviewers noted that the soundtrack, while solid, didn't quite match the punchy energy of X1. Certain weapons were criticized for being situational or less useful than their predecessors, and a few felt the X-Hunters could be frustrating if not approached in the optimal order. Despite these small critiques, most agreed that X2 was still a polished and worthwhile sequel that successfully built on the predecessor. From a fan perspective, X2 had a decent following. Many players appreciated the replay value of hunting down the X-Hunters, experimenting with the different stage orders and mastering the charged weapons. X2 maintained a fan base for decades. A few from the community have made their own spins on the game. A lot of these are translations though, X2 in French, X2 in Polish, things like that. Some hacks fix a few bugs, others add cosmetic changes like updating X or Zero sprites. Some of the more interesting fan projects let you play as Zero with his triple attack, another as Proto Man from the original Mega Man X series. And there's one that brings in the ultimate armor from X4 with the Nova Strike. These mods give a new twist to the game, but there aren't any complete makeovers, which is a shame. I was hoping to see at least one mod that changed things up in an extreme way. So, on its own, Mega Man X2 is a great game. Is it on par with X1? For me, the answer is yes. It's a sequel that manages to improve on nearly everything the predecessor did while carving out its own identity. X Hunters gave it a nice subplot to the story as well as extra bosses. The upgrades gave X a nicer look and added more to his arsenal. The soundtrack isn't as great as Mega Man X1, and some of the weapons aren't always the most useful, but the game's design and pacing do make up for it. Even if it doesn't always surpass the original in every department, X2 feels like a natural evolution to the series. It strikes a balance between familiarity and innovation, challenging players in new ways without abandoning what made Mega Man X so special in the first place. For anyone revisiting the Super Nintendo classics or rediscovering them for the first time, Mega Man X2 is a standout example of how sequels can elevate a franchise while staying true to its roots. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, then why don't you leave a like so people know that this is something worth watching. Maybe you could also subscribe, because I'll have more stuff on Mega Man X and more retrospectives coming very soon. Let me know what you think of Mega Man X2, by the way. Did you think it was as good as X1? Was it better? Was it worse? And I can't say I know exactly what's going to be finished next, because I'm working on a few projects at once. I can't exactly say I know for a fact what I'm going to have next, because I'm working on a few things, but I really need to just minimize this down to one thing at a time, and things can be finished a lot sooner. But they are coming, so stay tuned.